Cards. Alright, first up we got Splitting Axe, which is a shaman weapon. 4 mana 3/2, battlecry, summon copies of your totems. Right, so first of all, this has a lot of competition in shaman. Shaman has access to Lick Him, which is one of the strongest weapons in the game right now, I would say. And also if you're running an aggro shaman, you have Doomhammer as well, which is going to be better for going face. So this needs to fill a niche that those two other weapons don't fill. Maybe you still run Licking with this, I don't know. Synergies with this, summoning copies of your basic totems aren't really that great, and it's kind of hard to stick your basic totems onto the board before you play this anyway, because they all have 0 attack. If you're facing another tempo deck, and all you're doing in the early turns is hero powering, those totems are going to die, and the Splitting Axe is going to be a bit underwhelming. Synergies with this, the Amalgam cards, particularly Nightmare Amalgam, curves from this. You play Amalgam on 3, it's a 3/4. Maybe it takes a bit of damage, who knows. And then next turn, you summon a copy of it with the Splitting Axe, which is fairly good tempo. It's kind of like you're playing a better Arathi Weaponsmith, which is the Warrior 3/3, which summons a 2/2 weapon. This would be a 3/4 that summons a 3/2 weapon, essentially. So it's a little bit better. Well, quite a bit better. But that's not going to happen every time. The new Evil Totem gets copied by this, which is pretty good as well, if you can get it to stick. That will give you an extra lackey every turn, which is powerful, and then they still have to kill the totem that you summon. I think this probably doesn't go into just decks you see now. It would have to be a specific totem synergy deck. I don't know if there's any totem buffs that are going to be printed this set other than what we already have in Totemic Might. And Totemic Might isn't the worst card in a dedicated totem deck. I mean, when you're playing Amalgams, you play a 3/4 Amalgam and buff it by 2 health for 0 mana. It's not that bad a lot of the time. And if you have more and more totems, it becomes better. I'm not saying it's going to be good, but don't write off Totemic Might. It could be finally the time for a Totemic Might meta. Another thing, I'm not sure the name of it actually. There's a 2 mana 0/2 totem that deals 2 damage to the enemy hero at the end of the turn. So like you could, on like turn 8, play 2 of them and the Splitting Axe together, and then you get 4 of them. Or if you've completed the Shaman quest, you can get 6 of them. That deals a bunch of damage, 15 in total with the axe swing. So there's some memey synergies there. I think there needs to be some kind of totem buff for this totem deck to kind of work, but maybe it'll work. Otherwise, I don't think this weapon's very good. Next up, we have Wellkick Master. This is a rogue minion, 2 mana 1/2. Whenever you play a combo card, add a random combo card to your hand. So this is fairly similar to Underbelly Angler, but I think it's worse in several ways. The most obvious one is that the stats are worse. This is a 1/2 rather than a 2/3, so you're not even getting that. I'm just going to play this on curve and it is fine in stats. This is going to get killed fairly easy on turn 2 or get value trade into, which is pretty bad. Secondly, the cards you get when you're doing like say you're doing a big Underbelly turn, you're far more likely than this card to find very cheap things to keep doing the cycle. There's like a bunch of 1-drop Murlocs that you can get. There's a 1-drop Murloc that you can just run in your deck, which is also just a good card in Sludge Slurper. There isn't like any 1 or 0 cost combo cards available to Rogue right now. Like if you ever go for an Underbelly turn and the first Murloc you get costs 4, it just really sucks and it makes your turn awful. With this Wellkick Master, that's going to happen an awful lot. You're going to be getting 3, 4, 5 cost cards plus a lot of the time. And you're not going to get minions sometimes. You're going to get like Cold Bloods, which aren't always very useful. You're not going to be able to be putting stats onto the board, which is really what you want to be doing. There's a lot of ways this can go wrong. It's worth noting you don't really have to even combo the cards to get the effect of this. You could just play this on turn 2, and then on turn 3 you play an SI7 agent without the combo, and you'll still get a card out of it, which is a bonus. I just think the pool of random combo cards are too expensive for this to chain much. You can't really run any cheap combo cards specifically in your deck to get the chain going. It doesn't chain off itself, which Underbelly Angler does do. You can't get this from the combo effects to go infinite like Underbelly Angler can. It's just a whole host of reasons why it's worse. I just don't think it's going to see play. Next up we have Hooked Scimitar, which is a 3-mana 2/2 rogue weapon, combo gain +2 attack. Right, so there's already a couple comparisons we can use with this. The first comparison is with Wagglepick, which is 4-mana 4/2 weapon with the Death Rattle Shadow Step effect. So you're getting a little bit more out of it, and it doesn't need to be comboed, but it does cost 1 more mana. That is a very strong weapon, as we've seen. It's been played in a variety of rogue decks, particularly strongest in very face aggressive decks, which we saw in Pirate Rogue initially. I think Hook Scimitar might be a decent replacement for it, in specifically Pirate Rogue. Having this as a 3-mana 4 attack weapon means you can drop Dread Corsairs for free with it. If you go coin this Dread Corsair, it's a huge amount of tempo early on. It does have the downside of having to need a combo for it to be 4 attack, so it can be sometimes a little bit hard to do in Rogue, especially if you used your coin already. They do have access to Miscreant, which gives them 1-cost cards, so even on turn 4 you can go Lackey plus this for a 4 attack weapon, which is slightly better tempo than Wagglepick. Also, if you're running a pirate package, you'll be running Southsea Deckhands, which also act as a pretty good combo enabler for this with 4 mana. You can go Deckhand this plus a Dread Corsair, which is pretty nice tempo. One of the downsides of Wagglepick is sometimes you didn't want to swing it because you didn't want to shadow step your stats on board. Like, you're ahead on board and you don't want to swing it because it's going to bounce back your Captain Greenskin or something, and that's not something you really want to do. Also, if they have weapon removal, it could bounce back your Edwin or something. The Hooked Scimitar doesn't suffer these penalties. The second card you can kind of compare this to is Perdition's Blade, because that is also a 3-mana 2/2 combo weapon. The initial combo effect of Perdition's Blade is better than this, I would say, because you can split the damage across 2 targets, which is better than having a 4 attack weapon initially. But obviously the second half is worse, and you're also losing out on one of the most pivotal factors of this, is that reducing Dread Corsairs to cost 0. So I think it is better than Perdition's Blade, and Perdition's Blade has never really saw any sort of play. I don't think you want to run this card in any sort of rogue deck that isn't Pirate Rogue. The Wagglepick's just better for bouncing Miscreants and things. Kind of remains to be seen whether it will be better than Wagglepick. Obviously, Wagglepick works well with Leroy, works well with Miscreant, and you don't have to have the combo trigger. This is just a faster card for a faster pirate deck, but it might not be better. Next card we have is Mogu Cultist. 1 mana 1/1 battlecry. If your board is full of Mogu Cultists, sacrifice them all and summon Highkeeper Ra. I think this will show what Highkeeper Ra is. Yep, right there. 10 mana 20/20. At the end of the turn, deal 20 damage to all enemies. So it's pretty much nearly always wins you the game, I'd say. I mean, there are some circumstances where you get this down and you don't win. Like if you're against a control deck with a lot of armor gain or lifesteal, this might not always win you the game. But if you're against a tempo deck, it probably will. How do you trigger this? It can be kind of tough. Rogue has a really good way with Togwaggle's Scheme and the legendary 7 mana 6/6, which whenever you shuffle a minion into your deck, you get a copy into your hand. So all you need is a scheme that shuffles 7 or more of these, and then you just turn 9, do the combo, this, the legendary, and then shuffle it, and then you'll get a handful of these things, and then turn 10, you do your combo. It does seem pretty slow. Rogue's not great for control right now. Doesn't have any AoEs, doesn't have great life gain tools other than Ziliax. If you're running a bunch of situational cards like this thing, which you cannot play as a 1-drop really, you have to wait to do your effect. If you're playing the 7 mana 6/6, that's also dead until you do the combo. If you're playing Togwaggle's Scheme, that's also a dead card. So many dead cards in hand until you do the combo, and your opponent, when you do the combo, you're not affecting their side of the board. You're spending 9 mana to do all your shuffle effects. So they have a great way to either kill you, and if they're not on 20 or less health, they can set up burn damage from hand to kill you, like with a weapon or something, and then even if you do your combo, you might still die. There may be other ways to do this outside of Rogue in better control classes, which I haven't seen, or there may be new cards to be revealed which will help this, but right now I just don't think it's going to be good. There's going to be a card you're going to see in casual a lot. I think people will have a lot of fun trying to do this combo, but I think in competitive Hearthstone it is not going to be good. Next we have Diseased Vulture. It's a 4 mana 3/5 Warlock card. After your hero takes damage on your turns, summon a random 3-cost beast. Right, so how do you take damage as Warlock, and how good is this effect if you do? Is it worth playing a 4 mana 3/5? Well, the most obvious one is the life tap, hero power. It would turn into, if this is on board, draw a card, take 2 damage, summon a 3-drop, which I think the average is something like 2.5 attack and 3.5 health. Something around that. It's probably around the medium for 3 drops. So it's pretty good if it sticks, and having a card which your opponent is very inclined to kill so you don't get a benefit out of it can make their turns awkward. Like, they can't just put stats onto the board, they have to have a reactive turn, which is beneficial to you. I'd say a big downside to this card is it dies to Militia Commander. If we see from the Thunderhead buff, how well Thunderhead performs against Warrior has gone up drastically just from that 1 health increase, so it doesn't die to Militia Commander. This card does. I mean, you can play on turn 5 with, or turn 6 with like one of your damage effects, which is probably going to be the way you use this card mostly, similar to how Thunderhead, you don't really drop Thunderhead without having an activator on the same turn. But it's not going to be too hard for your opponent to clean up if they're a warrior. It might be better against other decks. I'd say the 3 main tempo cards you can run with this are Flame Imp, Crystallizer, and Spirit Bomb. All 1 mana cards, which means comboing with this is a lot easier. There may be some more cards released which will help as well. Flame Imp and Crystallizer are probably decent enough cards to run in Zoo right now, so there's not a huge downside in running them as well. Spirit Bomb is a pretty good tempo tool. You take a lot of damage when you use it, and there's not a huge amount of creatures you want to use it on right now. There's a bunch of lackeys and things, and you feel real bad if you're spending 4 damage to basically overkill a minion, and you take 4 damage in the process. It feels really bad. Of course, the worry can be like if you're playing against a deck with a lot of burn, like the aggro shamans you see right now, and you go Disease Vulture, Flame Imp, or Disease Vulture, Spirit Bomb, you're taking a bunch of damage, and it's something you don't really want to do against those decks. This card does remind me a lot of Thunderhead in the way you want to use it. The problem I see with it is the stats are worse. The stats aren't immediate effect. Like you can't use it to protect itself, because when you do Thunderhead turns and you use your Overload cards and your Rush minions that you get from it, you're effectively reducing the enemy board as well, so it makes it harder for them to kill the Thunderhead, so you can snowball even further. With this card, you play it on turn 5 with maybe Crystallizer or Flame Imp, and you just put in a bunch of stats onto the board, and it's hard to get repetitive use out of this effect. Something that is nice about this is if it does stick, you can, instead of spending cards from your hand, you can take a turn to life tap while still developing a similar amount of tempo as you would from playing a card from hand, which means that you're going to get a huge amount of value over the long term if you're doing this while still not conceding the board to your opponent. I think the fact that this dies to Militia Commander in one hit is going to hold it back. I think it's okay. I don't know if it will see play in Zoo. There really isn't too many activators right now, and one of them you'd have to run is Spirit Bomb, which isn't the best card on its own, but this might push it over the edge to make the tempo swing so big on turn 5 that Zoo wants to run it. We'll see. It just reminds me of a weaker Thunderhead, but Thunderhead is a nuts card, so being a weaker Thunderhead might be good enough for Zoo. Next we have Infested Ritualist. 2 mana, 2/3. Battlecry, restore adjacent minions to full health. Right. I don't think this card's very good. We've seen plenty of AoE heal effects in the game. There was the 3 mana 3/3 which healed 2 to all minions, which was pretty good in Heal Zoo, particularly with the synergies it had there. We have Potion Vendor, I think it might be called, something like that. It's like a 1 mana 1/1 which heals 2 to everything. That's not seeing any play right now. The problem I see with this card is most of the time you're not going to need to heal more than 2 or 3 to your minions. So you don't really get the benefit of healing to full a lot of the time. And it doesn't heal your face, which is pretty bad, because most heal cards you do want to be using to heal your face a lot of the time, and this doesn't do it. So I think it's very, very, very situational. Obviously there's reborn cards right now that are coming with this set, so maybe there's like a really big health reborn card, so when it dies you heal it all the way back to full instead of it being on 1, which could be kind of decent. Obviously there's things like Injured Blade Master, which is, this can heal for 4. Like this Blade Master plus this is fine as a turn 5 play. In Priest, with their new card, let's scroll down, see it, Psychopomp right here. You want to be running Blade Masters of that a lot of time anyway, so maybe this card could be somewhat decent in that deck. Just to heal up the Blade Masters or to heal up the things that you reborn. But otherwise, I don't think it's very good. I think it's going to be most times a River Crocalist that doesn't heal your face, which is something you really need out of heal cards. Next we have Into the Fray, which is a warrior spell. 1 mana, give all taunt minions in your hand +2/+2. So this is a huge buff. Soul Infusion in Warlock is 1 mana, give +2/+2 to your leftmost minion, which saw a decent amount of play when you could copy that effect onto more than 1 minion through Doubling Imp or Saronite Chain Gang. It was pretty good with those cards. We haven't seen that effect available for this right now, but this affects all taunts in your hand, so it is quite a huge amount of value. There was also a card in Mean Streets of Gadget Sound, which was a Paladin 1 mana spell, give +1/+1 to all minions in your hand, which was not terrible as a card. This is obviously double the effect, but it's more narrow in that it only affects taunt minions in your hand. The problem I see with a taunt deck running this card is there's no card draw really in Warrior. You'd have to be running quite a lot of taunts to get the most out of this effect. You don't really want to be hitting only a couple. I mean, it's probably not that bad if it hits this new 2-drop that we're about to talk about. By playing this on turn 1 and then a 4/4 on turn 2, whilst also buffing all the minions, the other minions in your hand with taunt, it seems pretty fine, to be honest. And given that all the minions are taunt minions that you're running and they get hand buffed, the stats have immediate effects. One of the problems with hand buff before is it's really slow. If you spend like mana hand buffing stuff and then putting slow stats onto the board which your opponent can ignore, you're not getting any benefit from the stat buffs. If they've got taunt, your opponent really can't ignore them, so it makes it a lot better. I mean, it's obviously a very powerful tempo tool. It depends if Taunt Warrior is going to be good. Obviously, this probably makes the cut in it. I don't think you want it in any other decks. Hitting this on a Zilix is pretty nice. Hitting it on the 5-drop mech with lifesteal that looks a little bit like Wally is pretty good. Yeah, it seems like a decent card. I just don't know. Like, you might just run out of stuff in Warrior because it's hard to run card draw and a load of taunts, so you get the most out of this effect. Next we have Anubisuf Warbringer. 9 mana, 9/6. Death Rattle, give all minions in your hand +3/+3. Holy slow. Batman. This is a really slow card. 9 mana, 9/6. Bad stats, no taunt, no rush. Hand buffs your hand for even slowerness. Yeah, seems pretty bad. Only combo I can think of is with this Rogue card, legendary here. If this can cost 1 mana with Anchor, so you Anchor, this costs 1, you play it and it dies, and maybe you've got a few other 1-cost 1/1 Death Rattles, they suddenly become 4/4s. That's pretty high tempo, I'd say, but it is reliant on you hitting this card. This Anubisuf Warbringer seems pretty bad otherwise, but it might be decent as like a one-of in this Death Rattle deck, just because this combo leads to pretty high tempo turns, especially with Magic Carpet actually. But yeah, other than that, it seems pretty bad. Next we have Infested Goblin, which is a 3 mana 2/3 taunt. Death Rattle, add 2 1/1 scarabs with taunt to your hand. Assume they're costing 1 mana as well. Yeah, pretty bad stats tempo wise. You don't get the additional 1/1s until this dies, so as a defensive tool it's actually pretty bad. Like if you need this to survive damage against your opponent, it's only got 3 health taunt, which is pretty easy to get through, and you don't get the immediate effect. You have to wait till your next turn to be able to play the taunts. Works pretty nice with Into the Fray. Either buffing onto this to turn it into a 4/5, it's fine, or getting 2 1 mana 1/1s and turning them into 3/3s. Playing 2 1 mana 3/3s is pretty good. Yeah, maybe if Taunt Warrior is a thing, it wants to run this card, but otherwise, I think it's not very good because you don't get the taunts immediately. Like if this summoned 2 1/1 scarabs with taunt for like maybe 4 mana, it'd be a lot better. But it's not that annoying to get through. And if you are playing against this card, you can set up for your next turn to be able to deal with the 1/1s a lot easier. You kill it, you maybe go wide on board instead of having a narrow board, and then the 1/1s aren't as big an issue for you. In Wild, this card's pretty crazy with the Warrior quest. It completes it very quickly, so it'll be good in Wild. Next we have Frightened Flunky, which is a 2 mana 2/2 Warrior card. It's a taunt, Battlecry, discover a taunt. Yeah, this card's nuts. 2 mana for 2/2 discover has been very good in the past in Hydrologist, and there was a card way back for Warlock can't remember the name of it right now, but it discovered 1-cost cards. That card was really strong. I don't think the Discover a Taunt minion is going to be as strong that often. It's usually going to be quite a bit worse on the tempo. But if we saw from Stonehill Defender, Stonehill Defender was a very good card, surprisingly good, when was a little bit of a sleeper in set reviews, and saw a huge amount of play because just summoning repetitive taunts that the opponent had to deal with was really annoying. And it's just kind of like free stats which your opponent has to deal with, and allows you to set up for AoEs and stuff. This card not got 4 health like the Stonehill, but it's cheaper. I mean, if you compare this to like Loot Hoarder, this has got better stats and taunt, and I think Discover is better than Draw a Card, most likely. It's worth noting that as a warrior class card and a taunt, it is more likely you find this taunt than neutral taunts when you're doing a Discover. So you're going to fairly often, like say for 4 mana, play this and then another one of these, and maybe just chain them that way, which is going to be pretty good in the right circumstances. Obviously good in the taunt warrior deck if that's a thing, but I think maybe this card actually is good enough that it will see play outside of taunt warrior. I think you can play this in control warrior, in mech, in bomb warrior perhaps, in tempo warrior decks as a 2-drop is fine as well. Like if you're defensive in a tempo warrior deck, or you need to be defensive, this is pretty nice, especially with this card here. Say you discover a taunt with this, then you play your taunt and you enrage it, and then you copy your taunt, and you've just set up a huge wall for your opponent to get through, which is really nice. So yeah, a really strong card, which will see play, I think, in a variety of warrior decks, even if taunt warrior is not a thing. Next up we have Wasteland Assassin, which is a 5 mana 4/2 stealth reborn neutral. Yeah, so like there's already a 5 mana stealth in Tiger. This is worse for trading, mostly, unless they got a really high attack minion. When it dies and becomes back reborn, the 4/1 will have stealth as well. So this thing is quite good for going face, because you go face with it and your opponent removes it, and then you've got another 4/1 to go face again for next turn for 8 damage, which is hard to interact with. It does die pretty bad to Warpath, and it's bad generally, I'd say, for board control against tokeny things as well. And it's kind of slow sometimes. Probably not going to see too much play, but if there is like a dedicated face attack deck, like maybe even one of Hunter, because with the King Crush legendary, you want to get them quite low on health so the King Crush can get close to lethaling them. This might make the cut as a one-of, because if you're playing a one-off, you need to pad it out, and this is quite a decent aggressive card for that sort of deck, so it might see play there. For some reason, the Play Hearthstone website hasn't got the Mage cards on here. Don't know why, but we are going to go over them, don't worry. There are 3 Mage cards to talk about. We have Arcane Flak Mage. After you play a secret, deal 2 damage to all enemy minions, 2 mana, 3/2. Powerful effect. It's kind of like Consecration. Doesn't affect your own side of the board, which is nice. You play this plus a secret on turn 5. Do an AoE to their board. Pretty good tempo. Not great secrets in Mage right now. There's no reason to really run any of them. Explosive Runes was a good secret when secret decks were around. That's not here anymore, unfortunately. You have to play the secret after this, so it's a little bit hard to navigate it. If you play this on turn 2, it's going to die a lot before you can even play your secret, so it's kind of a later game thing. But when you want to AoE, it's usually later on in the game anyway, so not too bad. I imagine they're going to release another secret this set if they're putting these secret synergy cards in, and there hasn't been a secret for Mage since Splitting Image, I think. So there's probably going to be a new secret which might help the secret style thing. It's obviously a powerful card. I don't think it's enough to make Secret Mage a thing yet. It's kind of a similar story of Cloud Prince actually. 5 mana 4/4, battlecry if you control a secret, deal 6 damage. Right, so it's like a fireball if you have a secret. Mage secrets are kind of easy to proc actually. The only one that's hard to proc, I would say, if you're trying to prevent this, would be Splitting Image, because you could just play Splitting Image with no minions on board and then your opponent can't activate it. All the other ones, if they're really trying to prevent you from playing this card, they can either play a spell for counter spell, spellbender, etc., or hit your face, or play a minion, and all the secrets are quite easy to test for that way. And if you're playing a secret deck, usually if it becomes meta, the secrets that they play become very well known, because there's usually only a few that are even worth playing, and it's usually something like Mirror Entity, Counterspell. It is an elemental as well, which is pretty nice with elemental evocation, because you can cheat this out. You can on turn 6 you can go secret evocation plus this for quite a nice tempo, or if your secret stays up you can evocation this out, etc, etc. Maybe you want to be running Mana Cyclone in that deck anyway, so sometimes you get the benefit of innovating this card out just because you want to be running evocation for Mana Cyclone regardless. I just don't think it's going to be good, the secret stuff. I think it's too conditional, too easy to proc. There's no way to tutor your secrets right now like before with Arcanologist. Yeah. Next we have Toland Pilgrim. Battlecry, discover a copy of a spell in your deck and cast it with random targets. 8 mana 5/5. So there was an 8 mana 5/4 which had Battlecry discover a random spell and cast it. This is a bit more targetable, or like you can control the effect a lot better by only running spells that you want to proc off this. This card scares me. If you're running a slower style Conjuring Mage, this card is really good in that. You're already running Blizzards, Frost Novas, that sort of thing. And just this card adds a lot of redundancy to those effects. You really, when you get towards the later turns, against some decks, you're going to have to be freezing the board pretty much every turn. And this card either means you've got the freeze in hand, so you can just play it from hand, you don't need to play this, or you've got it in deck, and this fetches it for you. And it discovers a copy, so you don't even lose the spell on deck. You can still draw it later. So yeah, it's going to be real frustrating to play against if you're playing like a minion-style deck, and it gets towards the later turns, and you're just going to have your board frozen every single turn. Especially with this card, I think it's very good. If your opponent's played Luna's Pocket Galaxy, this card becomes absolutely insane. If this is 1 mana, that you can draw it like straight away, and it freezes your opponent's board, and then you can conjure it. It's insane tempo. It's insane. It's like all the things you want to do. Obviously, the cards you don't want to really get from this are like Ray of Frost or Conjurer's Calling. You get the twin spell from the Conjurer's Calling, but most of the time your opponent's going to have minions on the board, and it's a random target. So it's probably going to hit your opponent more often than it's going to hit this. I still think you can get away with running this in decks which run Arcane Intellect, which run Ray of Frost, which run Conjurer's Calling, which run Elemental Evocation. Those sort of cards. They're not like great pulls from this. I mean, Intellect's probably fine a lot of time, especially if this costs 1. But you're going to be able to find your Frost Novas and your Blizzards from this pretty often. Another point to make, which I'm sure you've all been waiting for me to say, is it works real nice with Puzzle Box of Yogg-Saron. This is like a really good card to pull from this Toland Pilgrim. It's gonna do a lot of stuff. It's gonna AoE the board a lot of the time. It's gonna put like secrets into play, maybe even generate stuff, maybe draw some cards. This card makes Puzzle Box looks way better, particularly with Luna's Pocket Galaxy. Like I keep saying, if you get the Galaxy into this, and you're hopelessly behind on board, and you need to deal with the board because you don't have a freeze or whatever, this for 1 mana discovers Puzzle Box, draws you cards, puts stuff into play, deals with some of their board. Yeah, it's going to be really strong, I think. I'm not sure you want to run 2 copies of Puzzle Box, but I think at least one might find its way into this slower style of Conjuring Mage, which probably doesn't run Sea Giants anymore, but relies more on freeze effects and Puzzle Box and Toland Pilgrims. It's just an avenue you can take with that style deck, which is kind of already working a little bit now with Kalagos, Alexstrasza, that sort of thing, and Blizzards. It's just going to add a lot of redundancy, and it's going to be very strong, I think. I'm kind of hoping that Galaxy gets nerfed, and I think this card might be a catalyst for that, because it's just going to be so ridiculous if you go Galaxy into this. But yeah, I think this is one of the strongest cards they've revealed so far from the set. Finally, we have Pressure Plate, which is a new secret for Hunter. After your opponent casts a spell, destroy a random enemy minion. I think this card's fairly good. Nice thing it does do is when your opponent wants to play Sorcerer's Apprentice turns, this stops it, and kind of. I mean, Snipe also stops Sorcerer's Apprentice turns, but I think this card has other uses which might make it better than Snipe. An interesting interaction with this is if you've played this and your opponent tries to go for a Thunderhead turn, I think this card stops it in its tracks. They both say after you cast a spell, and I think if they're both in the same trigger zone, then the one that's played first will trigger first. So I think if you went something like Thunderhead Zap while Pressure Plate was already up, the Thunderhead will die before the 1/1s come out from the effect of the secret. So that is an interesting application for it. Yeah, if Giant's Mage wants to go Giant Conjuring, they will get the Conjuring off, but this will kill half of it. So it's another deadly shot against that specifically. It is a kind of bad against mirror images. So if they do something like Sork Images, this is gonna deadly shot the images 2/3 of the time. It does kind of prevent Sea Giant somewhat though. You're paying for the mana up front before they do the swing turn, so it's a bit harder for them to get a Sea Giant on the board if you're playing this card, I'd say, even though you're only deadly shotting an O2. Yeah, fairly decent secret. Probably see play in secret decks, probably not too much elsewhere. One of Hunter likes to run a lot of secrets because of Subject 9, so it'll probably see play in that as well if that becomes a thing. Obviously, if the meta is such that there's a bunch of lackeys about, which is probably going to be the case, this card goes down a bit in power level, and if there's not many spells being run, which isn't usually the case, but if you're against like a very zoo-ish meta game, this card can be just bad because it doesn't get activated very often, and if it does, it might just hit like a token or something, which you really don't want. It won't trigger if they don't have any minions, so you don't have to worry about that. Yeah. Okay-ish card, probably see a little bit of play. Has some nice niche applications, but it might be bad depending on the metagame. Alright, I think that's all the cards for now. Stay tuned in the next couple of days. We'll be doing more as more and more cards come out. So yeah, stay tuned. See you later.